is slightly different, but it is about neurodiversity. So first of all, thank you for being here. I really appreciate it. What I'm going to do is I'm going to give you some of my personal story, and that's only because it actually ties back to everything, and I think can trigger a few questions regarding neurodiversity, as well as a couple of things that we might not normally think about. So if that's all right with you, I'm going to start off by telling you a little story. Is that okay? Fab, thank you. Good stuff. Okay, so I had a bit of a wiggly road. Okay, so at 13 years old, I was at a new high school and I came top of the year in music. Top of the year in music. Can I have a woohoo? Thank you very much. And I was so bad at maths that I had to have extra maths lessons. I remember my teachers telling me, Michelle, just drop music. And I'm like, drop my best subject. Why would I do that? And they said, you don't need to take the O level. You can just pick it up at A level. So you can take Latin instead, which will help with your English A level. So the plans were to get me forward to A level. I soon realised that actually I wasn't very good at exams. So although they actually put me in for 9 O levels, I walked away with guess how many? 2. The only O levels I passed were the ones that didn't need any recall. So English language, I got an A. And art, I got a B. In maths, I got a U. U stands for ungraded. Okay, now, I can see there are a few young faces in the audience. So way back when I was at school, unfortunately, you only had one exam. They didn't take coursework into consideration either. So it was there and then. And your score depending on your score, was whether you are going to be able to go forward into university or not. And I failed, so I couldn't. Didn't matter because I was desperate to join the forces anyway. Now, I was the kind of person at school that loved all the different clubs. Is there anyone here that used to be in all the different after-school clubs? Yeah, I did hockey, I did netball, and the PE teacher used to say, you've got to pick one. And I'm like, why? And I had teachers say, Michelle, why are you in all the clubs? You're in acting, you're in the music club, the chess club, the photography club. Why don't you just focus? And I'm like, but why? I love doing it all. I really want to do it all. So one of the reasons I joined the RAF is because I had proper ants in my pants. That's what my mum always said about me. She could throw as many hobbies as she wanted at me, and I would still never have enough to do. And the RAF, out of all the different forces, had more extracurricular activity that I could get involved in. And I thought, this is brilliant. So I started all the sports teams. I played hockey for the RAF, mixed hockey, by the way, very dangerous game. I don't advise anyone plays mixed hockey. Don't let your children play mixed hockey. It's lethal. I also played squash for the RAF. I swam for the RAF. I actually didn't do much work, because in the RAF, they used to take you out of work in order to allow you to go and play sport. It was brilliant. And then after work, I was the local DJ, I was amateur dramatics, I was in all the clubs, and I was just living my best life. Until my personality started to come out. And I realised that I was probably not meant to be in the forces. Extremely maverick, very, very naughty, and always trying to bend the rules. So at 21, I came out of the Air Force and I started what can only be called an eclectic sales career. I think I started off, literally, I was selling advertising space for some kind of, it was a Chamber of Commerce brochure, and I was selling advertising space. And we literally used to queue up to go into the room in the morning, and we would literally grab a seat next to an ashtray with a page of ripped out yellow pages, okay, and a telephone, and we just had to go with it. And I kind of climbed my way up through sales. My last employed position back in 1999 actually, that was as head of client development at the Brandworks. So I'd clawed my way up and I worked at a branding agency as head of client development. I realised that I was fairly unemployable, and at 32 I launched my own company. My company was very maverick, very different. It was a very challenging, very disruptive marketing agency, and I wanted to bend the rules, and that's what I did. And we actually were one of the youngest companies in the country to gain Investors in People, and we were winning every single award you could imagine. All the chamber awards, best small company of the year, best service company of the year. It was fantastic. And I thought I was living my life on purpose. My partner and I decided to go on a few holidays to celebrate, learned to dive in the UK, and then we found ourselves on holiday in Sri Lanka at Christmas. So I was the CEO of FizzBang Marketing, that was my company, and we were on holiday in Sri Lanka over Christmas in 2004. Don't know if that rings any bells with anyone, but the background picture might give you a hint. We were caught smack bang in the middle of the Boxing Day tsunami. It's really strange, isn't it? Anyone fancy going for a swim, by the way? It's really strange because some of the best lessons can come from adversity sometimes. What I realised, yes, it was horrific. It was horrific, the most horrific thing of my life, okay? It was terrifying, it was heartbreaking, it was horrendous. The whole world was turned upside down. But actually, I'm just going to give you a few facts for those of you who are too young to remember. If I said to you, how many Hiroshima bombs do you think the earthquake was equivalent to? The earthquake that caused the tsunami. If I asked you that question, what would you say? I want a brave hand up. Give me a guess. Anyone got any clues? Sorry? 8. Okay, good guess. A few more than that. Any advance? 11. Good guess again. Bit more than that. One final guess. Anyone else? Sorry? 15. Another good guess. Okay, I'm going to put you out your misery. The earthquake that caused the Boxing Day tsunami was equivalent to 23,000 Hiroshima bombs going off at once. It was huge. So for those of us who don't remember, it was the biggest natural disaster in our living history. Here are a few facts. And everyone's safe. I'm not going to show any horrible pictures or anything. I just want to go through some facts. So first of all, it happened 30 kilometres below the seafloor. It was 1,200 kilometres long. That's the crack in the Earth's crust. That's from here to Germany. And that's a pretty big crack, okay? They reckon nearly 250,000 people lost their lives initially, okay? And that's why it's the biggest natural disaster in our living history. There were easily 500,000 injured. So many people lost their lives afterwards from displacement or disease or injury. And the worst fact of all is that a third of them were children. So it was a heartbreaking thing, and it reached every corner of the planet in terms of compassion. But here's the thing. What I learned in the aftermath of that event was absolutely magnificent. I realised that when you're in the face of adversity, you can see straight through to the core of humanity. And do you know what? It is magnificent. And I say that with my hand on my heart and say that if you're in the face of adversity and you see human beings putting their life on the line for a complete stranger, that rocks you. Okay, that rocked me to the core because I realised there's almost like this factory reset button in the face of adversity that makes people bring out their compassion, their benevolence, and all of that kind of stuff. And it was absolutely fantastic. We spent a week in Jimmy Lowell's garden, which was a garden at the highest point that we could get. Jimmy Lowell was a village elder who opened his garden up to loads of refugees. That community that we built and stayed in for just a week was absolutely incredible. And that's where I learned all my lessons that will then tie in to the whole neurodiversity thing. So we formed this little community that had no politics, no rank. There was no competition. Everyone just did what they could do. They bought what they had to bring to the party, and somehow we managed to work like a well-oiled machine. It was absolutely incredible. I'll give you one example of that. It's a bit of a lame example, but I just want to throw this out there. When I got to the garden, I had an old Nokia 10 in my hand. I don't know if anyone remembers the old Nokia 10. I don't think it took photos or anything, but I had that phone in my hand. I'd managed to get one message to my sister and to Stuart's sister, and it said, "There's been a bit of a flood, but we're okay." And then as soon as I sent that message, the signal went down. Now, I had no battery, I had no SIM card, I had nothing. I just had this shell of a phone left. And then all of a sudden, in this garden of about 100 people, somebody showed up with expertise in the technology that we needed. Somebody else turned up with a battery, someone else with a SIM card, someone else with a piece of wire. And does anyone know Bagpuss? It's on repeat, so you've got no excuse for not knowing Bagpuss. Bagpuss is one of the best children's programs on the planet. And what they do in Bagpuss is they take these toys that they find on the street and they magically repair them and put them in the window so that all the kids can come and collect them, all the lost toys and things like that. The items that actually get fixed are fixed by a particular... Does anyone know in Bagpuss who fixes the items? Did you say mice? Someone, yes. Okay, I'm going to sing the song now. The mice all crowd around this little toy and they go, "We will fix it, we will." Do you remember? And then all of a sudden they magically fix this little toy. And that's kind of what happened to my phone. Within a few minutes, this phone that wasn't working, all of a sudden was working. It had a limited life. So for those of you who don't know me yet, I'm a little bit bossy. So I used my talent to make sure that everyone was in a nice orderly queue and made sure that every single person in that garden got one message home. So with that phone and with that collaboration, with everyone bringing what they could to the party, we ended up reaching every corner of the planet and putting so many families out of that horrendous misery of not knowing whether their loved ones were alive or not. That was just one tiny example of what I learned about collaboration. So these are some of the most important things that I learned. First of all, I believe that beneath it all, humanity is benevolent and compassionate. And I truly believe that. I know that we get piles of stuff laid on top through our experiences, through illness, through things we've been through. Okay, but I really do believe that deep down inside, we all have that compassion. And if you don't believe me, just have a think about what we did when the pandemic hit and how many of you stood out on the street and clapped for the support workers and the NHS. Anyone? Did you feel that compassion? That is something that is just an astonishing feeling. And I love that. We're all driven by an unseen force. Now, that's something that really shook me because I thought I knew about behaviour. But when I saw people doing things that I didn't expect them to do, it made me think, I don't know anything about human behaviour. And what I now realise looking back is that our behaviour is there for everyone to see because we display it. We communicate in a different way, okay? We have different ways of communicating. We have different ways of responding. We have different ways of acting, all the way down to the way we dress, yeah, and the body language that we use. But actually, what motivates us is underneath all these onion layers. And we don't know what motivates other people unless we really know them very, very well. Or unless we ask them, okay? And sometimes people don't even know what truly motivates them themselves. So this is something that I thought, this is an issue here. You know, if we want to motivate people in the workplace, how are we going to know that? Just by looking at them. What's going to motivate them? What do they want? So another thing that I learned was that everyone has got something of value, equal value to bring to the party. And what I'm going to say is this. If you have something that you can bring to the party, you probably don't value it. And you probably don't value it because it comes naturally to you. It's easy for you. But for someone who can't do it, they think that it's a really valuable gift. Does that make sense? And if you think about, I'm standing up here on stage. Yeah, I do get nervous standing on stage, but I am doing it. It's something that I can do. A lot of people would think that this is brave, okay, or it takes a particular talent. All right? I don't know about that. But the point is that there are people in this audience that do things that I can't do. And I think, wow, that's amazing, because we appreciate each other's talents, especially when we can't do it. So you might not know what it is you bring to the party. Collaboration, it's all about creating something greater than the sum of its parts, and that's something that rocked my world. But for now, for this subject, I want to tell you a little bit about what I did with that information and get onto the neurodiverse bit, which you all came for. Okay, so I am now known as the people reader, and I have a whole suite of tools called the people reader analyses. And I wanted to turn these lessons into something that was useful for society. And I wanted people to be able to see their own magnificence. What did they bring to the party? Okay, where do they shine without having to go through the kind of trauma that I'd been through? So I set about creating. Rainbows are very important to me, by the way, and I set about creating some tools. And the first tool that I came up with was Essence, which is a core driving forces analysis. And what that does is it helps you to understand what truly drives you and motivates you. Then I came up with Clarity, which is a behaviour profile, and I particularly like the work of William Moulton Marsden. So I use his theory, and I wrote it all the way back to his original work and kind of wrote it from scratch based on his theory. And then I came up with something else called the people reader. And the people reader is a behaviour profile that you can do covertly on someone else in order to be able to build rapport with them. Okay, now that's where it started. But the reason I'm telling you that is because that's where the realization came. From doing thousands and thousands of profiles, I realised that patterns were starting to emerge. And people who were diagnosed with different neurodiverse conditions, I was recognising their results. And if I looked at my results, I was like, whoa, I'm massively polar in that. And I'm completely rubbish at that. And it started to resonate with me, so I started to do some work. What I then realised is if I went back in history, I could see the patterns. And I thought, oh my goodness. Okay, I got an A in English language and an ungraded in maths. Now, nowadays, teachers would probably say, hold on a minute, you can't be that polar. There's got to be something going on here. But back then, they didn't. They just said, you failed your exams, that's it. Okay? All the things, all the different interests I had, the spinning plates and all that kind of stuff, I was starting to click and think, yes, now I get it. That person that couldn't be in the Air Force because they were too naughty, too maverick, all right? And then decided that actually wasn't meant for the corporate sector at all anyway, and probably was employable and started her own company, which happened to be what? Maverick, okay? The fact that I had all these awards. Now, I realised later that all those awards and all of those endorsements and recommendations all around my boardroom were there to try and prove to myself that I wasn't that person, that thick person that I thought that I was labelled as when I was younger. And so I decided it's about time I went to get diagnosed. So now I am Michelle Mills-Porter, FPSA, which is Fellow of the Professional Speaking Association, but I'm also ADHD, dyscalculia, synesthesia, misophonia, hypersensitivity. Any more? Because quite a few of them are connected, aren't they? And I love this. And as soon as I found out, I had this conversation with my dad, and he's like, do you want to go and get meds? And I'm like, no, Dad, why not? I don't want to dull my sparkle. You know, I love me. I love what I do and what I stand for. I'm passionate. You know, I'm really enthusiastic. I say love. I'm very effusive. I don't say like, I say love. And I actually like those things about me. And I didn't want to go down the route. And I've got different ideas now, but I was only diagnosed 2 years ago. And this is the thing that it brought me back to. The fact that everyone has got something of value to bring to the party. And I realised that some of my superpowers were because of my neurodiversity. My ability to be able to hyper-focus. How can anyone that got an ungraded in maths start a company which goes from 0 to $750,000 turnover by year 3, doing all the KPIs, all the wages, all the targets? Okay, the answer is in hyper-focus. Okay, maybe I might need a bottle of wine after doing the wages, because it's not natural to me. But I suddenly started to realise that just because you haven't got the certification, it doesn't necessarily mean that you can't do it. We do things differently. And I started to see the beauty in neurodiversity. I'm going to take a little look at my watch, because there's no clock out here, and I just want to make sure I don't go over time. Why? Because professional speakers never go over. Okay, I've got bags of time, haven't I? Bags. Okay, I don't expect you to read this because it's too small, all right? But I wanted to show you what I did because I had a hyper-focus moment after sitting down and thinking, we've got to do something about this. And I did some research and I tried to find somewhere that would help people identify in the workplace whether people thought they should go and get tested for something. And do you know what? I couldn't find anything that would actually do that. So I started to map out, okay, what are the neurodiversities? We've got dyslexia, dyspraxia, Asperger's, autism, ADHD, acquired brain injuries. We've got Tourette's syndrome, mental health, and chronic neurological things as well. There's more, I'm sure. And I don't know necessarily what is PC and what isn't. So please forgive me, and please forgive me for my typos, because I can guarantee there are going to be some in this. Okay? But I am a creative genius, so you'll let me off, won't you? Yeah? Thank you. I started to map out the areas where people ask for help or support or think they need extra support. And I started to come up with this. And I started to see more patterns. And then I decided to come up, now see, I can see a mistake already. These are the areas where these people may have potential superpowers. And I can see a mistake right over here. ADHD hyperfocus, it's not highlighted. Can you see that? Brilliant. Brilliant example of my ADHD. Okay. But if you look at this, we can start to see the superpowers that people bring. Now, the only way to help people to be empowered and engaged in the workplace is to make sure that they are playing to their strengths and not to put them in situations or roles that actually draw strength from them, but just allow them to shine. There's a stand over there that says, help your people sparkle. I've definitely got to go over there because I love that concept. This is about helping people sparkle. And this and the previous graph were the things that made me say, I need to write an analysis about this. So now I have a few more analyses under my belt. One of them is one that helps children to navigate their relationships, because I don't know about you, anyone here got kids at school? Yeah, has anyone had a situation of bullying or, yeah, when people are kind of saying things on social media and you're thinking, that's not fair, I don't like that. Well, I went back to my childhood and I remembered a lot of those relationships were extremely painful. So I developed a tool that is based on behaviour profiling, but actually helps children to navigate their relationships. And actually, we've now got something that is starting to look like we're pinpointing some neurodiversity there as well. And then I also came up with the Strengths Illuminator. So Illuminator is the analysis, which is only available on paper at the moment. Okay, so if anyone's got a few £1,000s in their pocket, wants to join forces with me, we can actually put it on the platform with all the others. But seriously, this is something that I'm really excited about. Anyone else excited about it? Do you think it would be useful if you could actually see in the workplace whether people actually have a potential neurodiversity? But there's an issue, isn't there? The reason most people haven't done it is because most people don't want to point the pink finger at someone and say, I think you might be on the spectrum. Okay? So, what can we do to support? Here are some things that I'm sure you are all doing, but I just want to make sure that they're mapped out. And by the way, for anyone who wants some abridged slides, I've got those two previous graphs and some of these graphs and some of these slides on an abridged pack, which all you've got to do is just email me and I'll send it straight across to you. You do not go onto a list or anything. It's just my gift to you. So if you want them, you can have them. Okay. So first thing, we need to allow a safe environment. And that's a safe psychological environment for people to be able to show up with their superpowers. So right from the word, right from the stage of recruitment, we need people to know it's a safe place. And rather than getting people to hide their neurodiversity, actually looking at it as something positive and asking whether they have any neurodiversity. Do they have any superpowers? Why not ask that question, you know? So what can we do? Inclusive policy through onboarding, development, and even promotion to make sure that it's inclusive all the way and that we're always creating that safe environment and making sure that that safe environment goes through the whole development. I think that's absolutely key, don't you? How many of you are already doing that, yeah? You've got something in place that does that? Brilliant. Glad to see it. What about adapting our communication? Well, the way that we adapt our communication, colour coding. Now, I cannot read a spreadsheet unless you colour code it. Okay? I don't know what it is, but I don't get it. It just does not make sense. I'm getting a few people nodding. Okay? It's the same with my CRM. I used to have a CRM system that I could colour code, and now they don't colour code it anymore. And it doesn't make any sense to me. So I have to go through and spend time colour coding it, because for me, colour coding is my quick way to understand it. So maybe there's something we can do with colour coding for those that need it. What about having separate paragraphs, especially for people who are dyslexic? Does anyone know about putting extra spacing in? Yeah, in the words. So if ever you're doing a post on social media or a recommendation for me on LinkedIn or anything like that, okay, if you want people with dyslexia to be able to read it, put extra spacing in. Just put lots of white space in there and it's easier. Directions. So what we do, now coming here was a bit of a nightmare. I literally live half an hour away, okay? But I panicked because I knew I was coming to the NEC. Lots of cars, lots of traffic. I don't know how far I've got to walk. So my husband, knowing that I'm massively ADHD, actually booked me a parking space in the express car park, which is really close. So it was nice and easy, managed to get here early. It's great. But I need to have everything printed out. It's not good enough for me to have it on my phone. I want it printed out. And when I'm looking at a map, I just go the wrong way, okay? I don't use the tube when I'm down in London. I would rather use a Virgin bike than get on the tube. And people always say to me, oh, is that because you're worried about terrorism and things like that? No, it's because I go round the wrong way. I get constantly lost. I can't work it out. So I tend to get a black cab everywhere from the nearest station. So if I'm going to a new place, I like to see pictures of every turn in the road that I need to take, and that puts me at ease, and it gives me I don't get all that horrible, tightening in the stomach and all that kind of stuff beforehand, and it allows me to get to places without being flustered. What about signposting? Signposting in terms of meetings, what's going to happen? What's the agenda? What's happening afterwards? What do we need to do to follow up? Those kind of things are absolutely essential to many people with any neurodivergence. Adapt to the environment. Now, this is one of my favourite things. When I used to have FizBang, I used to do this anyway, actually, but at FizBang, we were in this beautiful converted barn. And what I decided to do to change the environment to make everyone happy is I chose these blinds that were like a skyscape. So they were blue with white clouds all over them. And it looked like a real sky. And there were pleated blinds in all the windows. In all the doors, I had these voiles, white and blue voiles. And instead of having normal heaters, we had the air-blowing heaters. And I changed all the lights to daylight lights. Does anyone have daylight lights in the office? Yeah? Daylight lights are magic. There's nothing more depressing to me than a pinkish light or an orangish light. I love seeing that bright light. It makes me happy. So daylight lights are absolutely brilliant. Now, what happened in my environment was even if it was a really horrible rainy day and really awful outside, as soon as people walked in the office, it felt like they were on holiday. There were blue skies and the sun was shining and the voiles were billowing in the breeze. It was gorgeous. So no one ever wanted to go out at lunchtime because it was a lovely place to be. Now, I've realised just how incredibly important that is to people with neurodiversity. And maybe it's the fact that I had undiagnosed neurodiversity that made me want to do that. But these are the things that we can do. Heating, some people are always cold, some people are always hot. And people deserve to be in an environment where they're comfortable, don't they? And that's when they're going to work best. So let's give people what they want. Do they want booths? Do they want soundproofing? Do they want an open plan office where they can mix with other people? Because everyone's different and our preferences are different too. Do people want headphones? What about the colours? Do people find the colours too garish? What about the decor? Some people, I walk into an office sometimes and there's so much around the walls, it just confuses me. I just want to see a clean wall. So we need to ask people what they want in their environment and make sure that their environment is designed for them. Does anyone know what I mean by a bat cave? This is always where the programmers sit. You've got nods. It's always where the programmers sit. You walk into their room, it's like a bat cave. They don't open the blinds. They're sitting there with their packed lunch and everything. They've got their headphones on. They're listening to their music, and it's really dark. That's the environment they like, okay? And there are patterns in behaviour. So, above all else, the most important thing, in my opinion, is to empower people. And I hope you agree. Anyone else? Does anyone not agree? Because I think empowerment is really important. And empowering people is the thing that allows them to be free. It gives them the permission. Give them that authority. Give them a little bit of stuff to be in control of, unless they don't want it, unless they want to follow the structure. But this is the question. Are we asking people what they want, or are we assuming? So, what do you want? What support do you want? What development do you want? In order to help your personal development program, what do you want us to do to help? What recognition or reward do you want? And some people don't actually want any recognition or reward. Some people love it. What do they want to be seen as, or how do they want to be treated? These are all really important things. But if we're not individually asking these things and we're just assuming, we're not going to get it right, are we? So I'm not here to preach. I'm here to just ask the question. These are the things that I would do as a CEO, but I'm not a CEO anymore. I don't know what you do. What works for you? Tell me. Because if we can collaborate and work together, then at the end of the day, we can all learn something. I believe that these are the things that create the culture that allows the growth of our people. And going all the way back to when I was a CEO and getting investors in people 20 years ago, that's the same message. I'm still banging the same drum. That's what I believe in. I believe in intelligent leadership. So, what does the future hold? Now, here's the thing. I'm looking at the moment, has anyone been looking into the correlation between comorbid conditions? Anyone looking at those kind of things? Because what I've started to see is OCD, really strong habits, and even addiction, very, very connected to neurodiversity. Now, I went to a couple of meetings recently. I'm not going to say what meetings they were, but you can guess what kind of meetings they were. Do this kind of stuff for all of my research and for myself as well. And I could have seen every single person in that room as having some kind of neurodiversity. There is definitely a link. But what are we doing to make sure that we're looking after our people? Now, I happen to work with IOSH, and up in IOSH, Scotland, I know that they're running programs for people that are neurodiverse that may feel that they have OCD habits or even addiction that they might want help with. So it's about thinking above and beyond. How is this connected? What else? What other complications are people likely to get? So I've got a very good friend. He's a futurist. Scott MacArthur, he predicts the beginning of the end of the organisation in the workplace because of one thing, and that's individualisation. Individualisation, what we're talking about here, is you being able to go into a restaurant and order whatever you want, regardless of what kind of diet you have. So whether you're vegan or vegetarian, or whether you're dairy-free or casein-free or whatever, that individualism is seen everywhere now, isn't it? And we're even seeing that in the fashion industry, people are producing items or producing lines of clothes that are only available made to measure. They're not available off the peg because they think that nobody is just a size 8 or just a size 20. People are different sizes, so we're making to measure. And we've seen that very recently in Australia at the fashion show there. So that was really interesting. And what we're looking at is the fact that if this is happening in every other place on the planet, why is the workplace the only place where we're not seeing individualisation? So either we do something in order to make that happen, or we might actually change and evolve in terms of the way we work. It's just a thought. There's one thing that I just want to finish with, and that's the fact that this can be a very scary world. A very scary world. But if I go back, she says, If I go back to what I learnt in the aftermath of the tsunami, the one thing that I was given is faith in humanity. And I truly believe that whatever happens, we will find a way through it. I believe that we can, and I believe that we will. I would just like to finish, because I know we're going to have some time for questions, and say if anyone does want any of those abridged slides, please just drop me an email. As I promised, you will not go on a mailing list or anything. Just say NEC in the email, and I will send you those abridged slides. Okay. Thank you very much for listening. I appreciate it.